Sony's Xperia Z and Xperia ZL marked the company's new struggle to make a dent in the smartphone market. With their announcement at CES, it was clear that Sony is doing everything they can to win with these phones, but the question is, are they really enough? So, after our full review of the Sony Xperia Z and now 2 weeks with the Sony Xperia ZL, it's time to find out. I'm Jaime Rivera, this is Pocket Now, and this is our full review of the Sony Xperia ZL. If I had to describe the Xperia ZL with one word, I'd call it elegant. Even when Sony decided to go for a plastic design and not the glass-on-glass and waterproof design of the Xperia Z, the ZL is just as polished and simply a beautiful design on its own. Probably what's most striking about this device is the almost invisible bezel on the 5-inch 1080p display, which leads to great one-handed use and a pixel density of 441 pixels per inch. Match that with the glass edges and the textured plastic design on the back with a perfect curve for your hand, and I'm sure that most of you will agree this is one of the most iconic designs of the year. When it comes to specs, the ZL is very similar to the Z. It packs the same Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro processor clocked at 1.5 GHz, 2GB of RAM, 16GB of storage expandable up to 32GB via microSD, a 13.1 megapixel camera at the back and a 2 megapixel camera at the front that are both capable of 1080p video. And it also has an IR blaster at the side and all the usual bells and whistles of a flagship smartphone. And then there are the things that make this phone stand apart from the Xperia Z, like the fact that it's got a dedicated camera button and you won't have to fumble with software, which is really awesome, but then you also have an LED light. And notice I said light, not indicator at the bottom, which changes every time you swap a photograph or swap a video in the same color to mimic what's on the display, but it's not really an indicator aside from indicating when the phone is charging or when it's full of charge. Sadly, just as with the Xperia Z, this device is conflicted. It brings an amazing design with last year's processor at times when the Snapdragon 600 is already out. It's also conflicted in the fact that this is one of the most beautiful displays we've ever seen, which is perfectly designed to bring 5 inches and 1080p to one-handed usability, but as long as you see it from the front, as viewing angles are terrible in comparison to even old Sony phones like the Xperia S. At first we thought this was a problem with the screen protector that's placed on pretty much every Xperia when manufactured, but once removing it, the results are the same. And yes, this is with the Bravia Engine 2 activated. Overall, the hardware is definitely something you'll like. The design is beautiful, you get expandable storage, an IR blaster, and if you're picky about pixel density and one-handed usability, this device is definitely for you. But things get complicated if you're picky about color on viewing angles or rocking last year's specifications in 2013. Software at a simple glance should be great, since it looks a lot like stock Android, right? Well, there's more to it than meets the eye. The device runs Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean, which is great, and Sony has retained the stock SoftKey design since their late 2012 lineup, allowing you to launch Google Now in the same way you can do on pretty much any Nexus device, but sadly the stock experience ends there, and that's for both good and bad. On the positive side, the device blazes through absolutely everything you throw at it, and pretty much with no stutters at all. The Sony UI is very refined, very polished, and it makes the device look very elegant. It doesn't matter if you're running applications, opening folders, flipping through screens, playing a game, the device is definitely a trooper in everything you throw at it. Sony has also enhanced it in places like their themes and elegant widgets, and even their multitasking menu, where you'll find floating widgets they call small apps, which bring you a calculator, a voice recorder, and other services anywhere you are, even within applications. This even includes a small app for the IR blaster, which later expands to their full IR blaster application, which is not limited to Sony products. You can add devices from almost every brand, or make the app learn controls if the device is not found, which is really neat. But on the negative side, there are some conflicting parts, like being able to move widgets around like on stock Jelly Bean, or the keyboard, which looks a lot like the iPhone's keyboard, but don't get confused, this is a terrible keyboard when it comes to text prediction, so just get rid of it when you pull the device out of the box. Again, software is something we'd call bold. It was a very beautiful and elegant move from Sony, but some things that weren't broken shouldn't have been fixed. Now, even with the conflicting aspects of this phone, using the Xperia ZL in real life is a pleasure for the most part. Because of its shorter design to the Xperia Z, it fits perfectly in your pocket regardless. And call quality is amazing, probably one of the best I've personally experienced on a phone. Clear sound on the earpiece and clear sound on the speakerphone as well. Data speeds and its switch between Wi-Fi and data were also great, but bear in mind there are 3 models of the Xperia ZL in the market, so just make sure you buy the device with the right bands for your network. Our review was based on the C6502 HSPA Plus model, which worked great for the most part. Battery life is another area where I'm honestly amazed, since the device pretty much took a good beating during the day and it did the same during half the night, and it had enough juice to go through the next day without a charge, which I'd call above average. And when it comes to its overall performance, the device handles games well. I mean, so far I haven't run into moments where I feel that it's lacking, but obviously stay tuned for our After the Buzz coverage on this device, since things might change after a couple of months. Now when it comes to camera performance, as with last year's Xperia S, photos are amazing as long as you keep them within the display. It makes them look good, but once you pull them into a computer, you do see some imperfections. There is some great color balance in the photos, but you do notice some mushiness here and there, and it just seems like if the photos aren't any better than any of the current other flagship smartphones in the market, even at 13.1 megapixels. And taking front-facing photos with this device is an exercise in frustration, since you hold the device at the bottom right if you're right-handed, and this is not where you expect the front-facing camera to be. When it came to 1080p video recording, HDR video did prove to be better. I couldn't consider it to be the best, but I did notice some better detail coming from the sensor than even on the iPhone 5. Even though, well, I did notice that it still can't tap to focus, just like you can on pretty much every other flagship smartphone in the market. Which is pretty much my complaint with every Xperia smartphone. Bottom line, Sony scored a hit with the Xperia ZL when it comes to design. I mean, this device is a head-turner no matter where you go. But I'm just not sure they hit it out of the park, since it's hard for me to recommend it when compared to other flagship smartphones like the HTC One or Galaxy S4 that are both coming. Even if you're in the Sony ecosystem of products, the integration between Xperia smartphones and Sony products is still in diapers, so I could recommend it to Sony fans in general, but not to make their experience with any Sony product any better with an Xperia phone. Now, in all fairness, if you were to judge this phone on its own and not compare it against anything, I'll admit that I've had a very delightful experience with the Xperia ZL. There is just something about this phone that is great, and I'm honestly going to make this my daily driver going forward. So, our final rating for this device is 8 out of 10. That's it for our full review of the Sony Xperia ZL. As always, thank you very much for watching. I am Jaime Rivera. Be sure to share your comments down below if you have any questions or any impressions as a first-time Xperia ZL owner. Obviously, we are very interested in that. And make sure you follow us on your social network of choice. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw, and thank you very much for watching.